Hello, everyone, and welcome to TEP Talks Professional Series, a groundbreaking new podcast dedicated to showcasing the diverse career journey and professional accomplishments of TEP alumni, brought to you by the TEP Foundation. I am your host, Stan Silverman, URI Class of 79, Tau Omega 402. It's my privilege to speak to TEP brothers across a wide spectrum of industries, gaining insights into their fields, advice for breaking in, and a realistic look at the day-to-day work behind some of the most impactful careers in the modern economy. Personally, I found so many of the brothers with whom I spoke to have such interesting stories. I'm sure that in addition to the educational benefit that you will gain from watching and listening to these professionals, the stories that they tell are just plain fascinating. So pick one, anyone, or pick them all. I'm certain that it'll be worth your while. Thank you and happy watching. Hello, everyone. Today, I have the privilege of speaking with Bobby Swistun, Queens College alumni, NYPD retired cop. So, without further ado, here we go. So tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm a 44-year-old retired cop now.
Okay. So obviously the word, I was going to ask you if cop was an offensive term, but obviously it's not.
For me, no. Some people have an issue, but no. For me, not all police officers are cops. A cop to me is someone who can handle all the situations thrown at them, who doesn't panic and try to run away. A police officer is someone who has the job. A cop is the experienced police officer, like an upgrade in title. And to answer your question, I was on the job for 10 years.
Okay. Can I ask why you're 10 years and out?
You absolutely can. So I was an active cop. I wasn't afraid to put my hands on people. I wasn't afraid to run into the burning building,
Right.
I have chased many people. I have fought many people. I've been involved in protests. I've been involved in everything. And over time, injuries took over. From trying to stop a drunk driver from running into a pile of people and taking the absorption of their vehicle into my RMP. RMP is a police car, radio motor patrol car.
Okay.
Things like that, like being T-boned in that car trying to avoid gunpoint robbery. Things like that.
So you went out on disability.
I did. So as part of my situations, I wound up with multiple line of duty injuries, resulting in 5 surgeries, and the 5th surgery being a knee replacement. And the NYPD and New York City says you're a liability with a knee replacement. You can have a hip replacement, you can have a shoulder replacement, but you can't have a knee replacement.
I don't understand the logic of that.
Nor do I. I fought. I was on the list for promotion for almost 5 years, and I was called up 4 different times. And the department kept saying, no, you have to wait. No, you have to wait. You have to get back to full duty, which isn't actually true. There's different standings. There's full duty, there's limited duty, there's restricted duty. Limited duty just means you're in a temporary hiatus, meaning like you're on desk duty or light duty, but you're really not supposed to be out on patrol because you're recovering.
Right.
So the first time I had come back from, I think it was my 2nd surgery, they put me on limited duty, which is an automatic. Once you're out, you're automatic. And if you're on limited duty for more than 30 days, you get bumped to restricted duty, like if you can't return. So I was about 3 weeks in to recovery, like coming back after, post-surgery healing, and then the job the job evaluates you repeatedly.
Mm-hmm.
So after my third evaluation, because they were doing it weekly, I said I'm good to go. My doctor said I'm good to go. My notification to go to supervisory training came out, and they put me into restricted status to prevent me from going into the training. So it was fun. But I fought quite a bit for a few years. And finally, the job just said, and when I say the job, I mean NYPD,
Right.
Ultimately, they said, you're too much of a liability for New York City, not necessarily the department. So they kind of passed the buck, but they're the ones cutting your career short.
Right.
But I have all my knee damage. I have my back damage. I have my scars, my puncture wounds, we'll say, all from being a cop, being an active cop who put other people first. And many cops that I've worked with will refuse to go out. They'll refuse to go line of duty or even report their injuries, and they'll just work injured because they don't want to be taken off the street. That's also a hazard.
And I'm sure that every profession has them. There must be police officers who are less likely to put themselves in the way of danger.
Even more so now, since my retirement, upon the introduction of COVID, following that, a lot of cops have taken an almost laissez-faire approach, hands off, because the city's not going to protect me. When I get hurt, yeah, they might pay my medical bills, but they're also going to let me be sued and not necessarily indemnify me or cover me, and all it takes, unfortunately, the Civilian Complaint Review Board, which is known as CCRB, has a lot of people who are anti-police within it. Now, I understand both doing the job and just being a human. There are good and bad in every profession.
Sure.
I worked with cops that I would turn around and walk away from because I wanted nothing to do with their mentality. And if I have to account for you having my back when we disagree on something, I don't want to be near you, and I don't want to be responsible. Not to say I wouldn't back them up, but I don't want them backing me up. I don't want to be responsible for your actions because you put me into a situation I didn't need to be in.
Right.
And police officers are very often in situations they don't care to be in, but it's also the job we sign up for. If you do it for the right reason, and the right reason is to actually follow the motto and the creed, to protect and to serve. And now, granted, to serve does not mean I wipe your hiney. But if I had to, if that was going to save your life, then guess what? I'm going to do it. I mean, we all have stories, but I had one story where I had to scale the side of a building to a third-story balcony and break in, like force entry into a place because we could hear the resident moaning and screaming for help, but we couldn't find a way in because third-story walk-up. Find out that I gain entry, I forced entry, gained access, and go to find out that it's a 98-year-old woman who fell in the tub when she was trying to get a roll of toilet paper.
Right.
So, yeah, I have had to wipe somebody's rear end, quite literally. But I wouldn't trade that experience for the world because that woman needed help. Whether she asked for it or not, she needed it. And her calls for help were in essence the ask. But I know that I helped that woman make it through that day. Other cops who are like, I'm not doing that. Well, let me rephrase that. I know some officers who are saying, I'm not doing that. So there is a character trait that has to reside within you. And this resorts back to your original question about cop being offensive. In order for me to consider you a cop, you have to share similar qualities to what I would expect of you. You know, like, yeah, you could wear the badge, but that doesn't mean you're going to do what needs to be done when it comes down to it.
I need to clock punchers.
Correct. Like, I get that people become police officers, especially NYPD, to get a pension. Now, is that a benefit? 1000%. I'm an example of that. I'm out on disability for the remainder of my life. Can I do other things? Yes. But am I at limits? Yes. And I'm also at financial limits by having my pension. But the fact is, I have my pension, I have my benefits. My children are covered until they're 26. Right. Because of whatever sacrifices I may have made. And there are others who made the ultimate sacrifice. And I don't want to be compared to them because I respect them beyond all control. But I acknowledge that the importance of a pension and their families having what they need and me and my family getting what we need, those are relative to each other.
Mm-hmm.
So I dislike the standards to become a police officer personally.
Which standards are you speaking of?
So in order to become an officer,
yes,
to apply for the NYPD and to hopefully get into the process and pass everything, you need to have a minimum of a 2.0 GPA. And you need to be 21 years old, and you need to have a minimum of 60 college credits. Now, I stand on these statements for when I was hired. I don't know if those have lessened. I have heard that they were talking about lowering the requirements, meaning like 30 college credits or no college credits, lowering the age from 21 back down to 18. I'm not sure if they've done that. At the time that I was hired, those were the requirements. You needed to go through a background check. You needed to provide neighbors and resources and references who could be interviewed to get their proper character assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And these are the requirements. That doesn't mean they follow them for everybody. And you, as you may well imagine, in any other business, nepotism exists. Who you know exists and helps you, and that helps you thereafter the academy too. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Throughout your entire career, it ultimately can rocket your career to a different level depending upon who you know. But back to the requirements. So character assessments, you have to prove that you're not colorblind past a certain extent. You know, you have to pass a physical, the job standards test. It's called the JST. And then you have to go through approximately 6 months in the academy. You have to provide that you're proficient enough, and I say that with tongue in cheek, proficient enough to carry that firearm on the streets of New York City. You have to prove that you understand and have passed the exams to provide proof of your understanding of what laws are required, what constitutes certain crimes, stuff like that. You do have sort of history lessons within your training. You have CPR, you have COBRA, which is chemical, ordnance, biological, radiological awareness. So that has to do with attacks or events, you know, like a gas leak or a ricin attack in the subway or unfortunately a 9/11 occurring again, things like that. So you have to learn how to don protective mask with air filters. You ultimately, when you become a police officer, you sign up to put your life on the line every day. I had an officer who was about 7 lockers away from me, and one of the rookie officers decided he was going to discharge his weapon while trying to put it in his holster because he did exactly what you're told not to do. And it is drilled into you in terms of safety in the police academy. We weren't even out a month and he let a round go in the locker room.
Right. What happened to him?
He was modified and he was sent for retraining and he was restricted for quite a few months. They took away his gun and shield. So when you get restricted, they often take away your gun and shield.
Mm-hmm.
Let me rephrase that. I apologize. I just misspoke. When you are modified, you have your gun and shield removed. Some people who are restricted are also modified. So,
Okay.
like for me, I was restricted for 14 months, which is, by the way, past the limit. It's not supposed to be more than 13 months maximum. But again, because I was fighting so hard, they had to follow every request and every hearing in order to force me out. So, um, so these people who are modified they have no access to firearms. They have their identification card now says no firearms on it. You know, it's made very clear like they have had their firearm removed. They're still a police officer, but they're not on the street. They're not armed. So that's
Okay.
but he ultimately he should have been fired because he was on the probation period and he violated damn near every safety standard you can have. But
Wow.
that's one experience. But he was a young kid. He was 21. He thought he knew everything. He was showing off, and he did something stupid. But that could have resulted, and it did result in another precinct, someone doing something stupid in the locker room, and they let a round go, and it went into one of their partners, went into another cop. It happens because immaturity. So that's the problem I have is the age. I think you should be maybe 23, 24 minimum. I
Mm-hmm.
prefer 25 because your brain doesn't actually stop growing until you're 25 or fully form until you're around 25. I had the experience that I went later on anyway, but that is my experience.
Okay.
So, but
So you joined TEP at Queens College.
I did Epsilon Theta.
Okay. You that was your freshman year?
Yes, I did spring of freshman year. I did not go in for first semester or first
When
half, you know.
when did you decide that you wanted to be a cop?
Um, Initially, when I was 18 and I decided I was taking the tests, whether my father approved of it or not. But I originally and ultimately wanted to be a lawyer. My
Okay.
goal was to be an attorney. Um, and my father had been a police officer. So he told me, "You're too smart. Don't give up your path. And I don't want to see you in a blue collar job. I want to see you become a lawyer." So he refused for me to join for up until his deathbed. Um, and after he died, so I'd still wanted to do it, but it just wasn't my goal, you know. Um, and he passed away in um, 2004,
Mm-hmm.
and in January of '04, I he passed away at the end of the month, and by the last day of January, I called the NYPD and said, "Is there any chance my list is still active?" And they said, "Yes, you're on the list to be called tomorrow." So it
Wow.
was it was as if there was a message.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew with all that was going on in my career as well as my healthcare career, um, that it was going to be a little bit of a process for me to stay where I was. So I opted to start the process with the NYPD. And in that process, there were some issues that they found on me, as well as issues with budgetary needs for New York City. So they canceled the class that I was supposed to be put in. And that process, by the way, was about a year and a half. So I was still working in healthcare during it. Finally, NYPD recalled and said, "We're putting a class in. Are you still interested? You still have everything passed in the process is still valid, because it's only certain things are only valid for 6 months, like certain investigation factors." And they called and said, "You're still valid. You can get into the class." I turned around. I asked my employer, "Am I going to get what I have been promised for the last 9 months?" And he said, "We can't do that right now." And I said, "Okay, consider this my resignation. I will be gone tomorrow." And I had to do an immediate resignation because I needed to call the police department back, because the next day was going to be the swear-in ceremony. And I went to the ceremony the next morning, and we stood in front of One Police Plaza because it was a small group, and they canceled the swear-in ceremony that morning. Bloomberg cut the course. Bloomberg cut the force.
So they cut the class
Again.
And then how long? So now you're without a job.
So I went back to the office the next day, and I explained. I said, "Look, I apologize for my abrupt resignation. However," and he had told me, my VP had told me, "If you ever want to come back, please don't hesitate to contact me." So I knew the door was open. I didn't think it was going to be open so quickly. So I went back and I spoke to him and I explained what happened. And he said, "I didn't want you to leave to begin with. I want to give you what you're asking. I want to give you what we promised. I just don't have the power to do that right now." I said, "Okay." He said, "Give me 2 weeks." Funny enough, when they canceled the NYPD class, they said that they weren't going to have it. About a week and a half later, I got a call saying the class is going back in. We're going to do a swear-in 3 days. Are you willing? And I went to my VP and I said, "Did you get anywhere on this?" And he said, "No." And I said, "Okay, well, I was just notified that they are now pulling the class back, and this is something I'd like to do." And he said, "I respect your decision. And again, I offer to you, if you need to come back, the door is open." He's like, "I don't want to lose you, but I understand you have to do what you need to do too." So I went, and I was in a class of 278 recruits. It was like one of the smallest classes ever.
Okay. Why did you decide that you wanted to be a cop?
So I ultimately felt, yes, jerked around by the healthcare system. But there was a piece of me that was the final straw that said, I know Dad didn't want this for me, but I was suddenly at an age where I realized all the things I hated or held against my father were all the things I now admired. So I decided it was time for me to take that step and follow his footsteps. My mother lost her mind. My wife at the time said, "I didn't marry a cop. I don't want this." And I said, "Well, unfortunately, this is still my life. You're a part of it, but I need to do what's right for me." So I did. But, some people, there is a sense of calling, and some people don't understand that. And, for me, my mother knew my father didn't want me to be a cop. My mother wanted me to be happy, but she, as a parent, also selfishly didn't want to have to stay up at night wondering if the call would be the call. My ex-wife didn't really give a shit, though I have injuries that will plague me for the remainder of my life. I have limitations. But overall, my limitations are minuscule and may have happened outside of work. There could have been a chance my knee just gave out and I needed a replacement 7 years from down the road from now. And it is what it is. That's it. You don't have an option, you know. You got to do what you have to do, and you got to keep moving forward. But because things happened the way they did, my children learned that my children actually got to experience something I didn't. My children grew up with their dad at home since they were 5 years old. You know, when there was something at kindergarten, some sort of class event, they knew that their father would be there. And that's not common for people today. You know, that's not how I was raised. My father was almost never at anything. He worked overtime galore. My father was actually, the year he retired, he was number two in, he was not happy about this, by the way. He was put in the Daily News and the Newsday because they had decided to do a review of the top paid city employees. And in relation to all the contracts that were changing that year, my father was number two in overtime payment and salary for New York City employees. And he was in the newspaper and he lost it. My brother was also a cop too. And we both, and when I say brother, I mean like we grew up together.
Right.
So he got on a few years before me, and his retirement his numbers were based off of his highest year of his last three.
Okay.
My number is based off of my last 12 months. Doesn't matter. Now, if you remember, I said I was restricted for almost 14 months, which meant I sat at a desk and almost zero to minimal to no overtime.
Right.
I also I've had many, many different careers within the department, many different distinctions. One of them was field training officer. So there are different officers within the department and within the precinct that handle like budgetary. You know, there's like an ops coordinator who's a lieutenant. Then there's a sergeant that works below him or her, and they all tell you what you can and cannot do. You know, because they have to toe the line for the city.
Right.
And they work the budget. And one of them came to me and said, "I know the commanding officer, the CO. I know the CO is punishing you. I know he won't let you leave," which, by the way, nepotism was to benefit me because I knew a 2-star chief who wanted me to go work for them until I retired, which would have given me approximately 300 hours of overtime every month. Every month, sitting at a desk for the remainder of my career, whatever it was, whether it was 2 months or 12 months, didn't matter. My commanding officer called his 2-star chief friend and said, "This guy is a do-nothing. He just sits on the TS, which stands for telephone switchboard, which is really just the front desk. You're the cop that greets everybody that comes in. And you answer the phones when they call the precinct.
Right.
You're a glorified secretary with a gun." So he went to his 2-star chief and said, "This guy does nothing. He always works on the TS. He doesn't make arrests. He doesn't do this. He doesn't do anything. He won't work for me. So you can't let him leave. I want him to suffer out the rest of his career." And the 2-star chief said, "Okay." So the 2-star chief trumped my 2-star chief because of their position. And I was stuck there. So I gained, as a result, the ops coordinator came and said to me, "I know how you can make a little overtime for as long as we can sneak it in." And I said, "Okay, how?" He said, "You're a training officer." I said, "Yes, I am." He said, "So train. When a cop comes in with an arrest, talk to the field training officer that's active, because you're not technically active. And if they want to go back out on patrol, you help them with the arrest and you account as training overtime because there's a certain budgetary allotment." And I said, can I do that? And he said, we can try. I got through 18 hours and the CO said, nope, F this kid. So I got 18 hours in 12 months.
Wow, I'm sorry.
By the way, I was an average 275 to 300 overtime hour person.
Amazing how the politics of every profession.
Yeah. So, and again, why I mentioned nepotism, how it works to and against, or for and against.
So was this Serpico hairdo of yours? Is this only since you've been retired?
This is post-retirement, yes.
Okay. Just curious.
Yes. The beard and the hair were immediately upon retirement because, and I will tell you, this was my exact mindset. I have spent the last 10 years of having someone tell me what I can and cannot do, to measure the facial hair on my face if I didn't shave. Now, luckily, I didn't have to shave every day. I shaved every like 3 or 4 days, and could get away with it, by the way. And I turned around and said, I need to be me. Like, this is now my time. Like, everything else has been taken away from me. I need to find some sort of resilience within me to say, I deserve to have a say in what goes on with me.
Sure. Right. So TEP had nothing to do with you getting this job.
Ultimately, no, zero.
Okay. Okay.
There is a funny correlation, though.
Go ahead.
My big brother is also a sergeant. Actually, I believe he's a lieutenant now.
Really?
Yep. And I was in Manhattan going to the tree. And lo and behold, I turn a corner and there's my big brother standing right in front of me. And he was like a bodybuilder. So he was this like 6'2", 6'3" jack dude in navy blue with patches and all. And I look, and he looks at me, he goes, Swiss? I was like, dude, what are you doing? He's like, oh, well, I run, not run, but he's like, I'm running this detail right now, but I work in citywide traffic. They handle like the flow of like all the dignitaries that come in, as well as summonsing traffic agents and traffic flow and whatnot. And he's like, yeah, that's where I work now. And I was like, holy crap, dude, I forgot you were even a cop. Like, and he's like, yeah, I kind of forgot that we even know each other. And I was like, yeah, he goes, I don't mean that in a bad way. He's just like, we haven't seen each other. We haven't talked in so long. You know, like you kind of just keep moving and everything else is in the rear view. And I was like, you're right. And him and I were like, we can't let that happen again. So actually we got together about a week later, and then we were periodically going out and just making sure we caught up with each other, just following each other's careers and trying to figure out how can we bring back the days of supporting each other. So, and it wasn't taken in a negative way, like, oh, I forgot you existed. But I mean, think about it. How many people do you forget you even know until you see them again? Or you see a picture and you're like, oh my God, I know them.
Life gets in the way.
Yeah.
Sure does. So what are the highlights of being a cop? I'm sure delivering a baby has got to be one of them.
I have done that, and yes.
Okay.
So that is very messy, by the way. For me, the highlight was being the person to help them in their chaos. And sometimes it wasn't a highlight for me to arrest people. I mean, did I enjoy it at times? Yeah. I enjoyed breaking up a fight or putting somebody away who was beating somebody else or hurting someone else or, stealing from a business. Yes, I absolutely did. But I also remembered that there's a good chance that whoever's committing whatever crime there is, there's some reason that they're committing it for them. Now, granted, a lot of crimes are committed out of opportunity. A lot of criminals are opportunistic, which is understandable because humans in nature are opportunistic.
Right.
Self-centered and opportunistic, sadly. So, whereas I enjoyed making arrests to get people out of certain situations, in that same response, once the cuffs were on, once I got you subdued or whatever, or into my RMP, and we start driving to the precinct, because we processed everything at the precinct, then we transferred to central booking and reprocessed there. The New York City system is just ridiculously antiquated and slow. It just is. But literally, once you're in cuffs and we're transporting, I'm going to treat you like a gentleman or a lady. I'm going to ask you, are you okay? Now, we're trained to automatically ask for, do you need medical attention, this, that, whatever? Do you have any complaints of pain? Because we have to document it, because that's a CYA thing. It's a cover your ass rule. But at the same time, I genuinely meant it. When we get to the precinct, do you need a drink? Are you okay? Is there any medication that we have to worry about? Do I need to call an ambulance to make sure you at least get your medication? Because you're going to be here for a while, and then oftentimes, because I was younger, the younger cops, the rookies and whatnot on different shifts early in my career, I did a lot of transports, meaning I took the people who were processed in the precinct. We take a van full of people to central booking to be processed to go for arraignment. There were times where I was transporting 6 to 10 guys with another cop. One other cop transporting 6 to 10 people who are in handcuffs. Not exactly the safest method for anybody, by the way, for the perps as well, or those who are arrested. But even then, are you guys okay? Are you ladies okay? Do you need anything? And everybody would say the same thing. And I actually appreciate it, because this was an advantage for me. This was a benefit for me. People that hate cops will fight us tooth and nail. When I transported them, by the time they got to go into holding and central booking, they were like, Officer Swiss. Everybody called me Swiss, whether it was Officer Swiss or whatnot. It was just easy. So the Officer Swiss, you're the coolest cop. You and your partner are the coolest cops. You make us not hate cops. That was my advantage. That was my goal and my benefit. Yeah, you made a bad choice, but I'm not going to condemn you for the rest of your life for your bad choice, for what you did in the heat of the moment. Was I happy you did it? No. But am I acknowledging that there was something else going on? Yeah. And there were times where I'd see somebody really upset or frustrated or angry, and I'd try to talk to them, whether they were my perp or not, whether they were my arrestee or not, because sometimes people just need to be heard. And it gave me that chance to treat people like humans. That was most advantageous to me.
What were the challenges of your profession?
the NYPD in general.
Okay.
No, challenges, I would say some safety challenges, as I mentioned, training, the ages of some of the other cops, and the mental acuity of other cops or other police officers. Equipment was a challenge. There were times that our police vehicles didn't have heat in the middle of winter. The training that we received was nothing more than a check the box. And that's a challenge for me. If I'm going to learn something, I want to learn it, and I want to learn it well. I don't want to just check the box. So where I said that I had the opportunity to have different distinctions within the department, I requested every sort of training I could get. And the ones I was able to acquire, I capitalized on them. I was trained for field training. I was trained in counterterrorism. I was trained in highway training, like speed training. I was trained in accidents. I was trained in auto crime. Like all these different little nuances that exist within the department. And at one, I was trying to get what's called HIDA training. It had to do with drug trafficking, and it also crossed the line working with federal agencies like the FBI. That was one that I was trying to get into. Just again, open the doors. And the challenges were also, as mentioned earlier, nepotism. Because if you don't know the right people, you don't always get afforded the opportunity. And at the same time, emotions of supervisors over competency. I was good at what I did, but because I didn't do things the exact way you wanted them done, you have the opportunity to, and you capitalized on limiting any sort of training that I could get thereafter. I had a special ops lieutenant who handles all trainings, and he I did overtime for him one time, and he loved my overtime numbers. I did exactly what he asked. Then the next time he was like, "Listen, I need a fill in," and I was like, I have other things I have to get done." He's like, I need the body, so you're coming. And I gave him less numbers than he asked for because I couldn't find what he was looking for.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, quotas did exist at the time. I don't know if they still do, but they did. And he had his own self-imposed quotas for these operations. And I couldn't give it. And I had a request in for scooter training because I wanted to get my motorcycle license because I was going to apply to highway training, like for highway division.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, he canceled my trainings and he withdrew my application to highway because he was mad at me. Those were the challenges, you know.
Do they teach you driving and pursuit of bad guys?
They definitely, yes, we're trained in it's called evoc. So
Okay.
it's uh emergency vehicle training. And it's it can be fairly intensive depending on the trainers. I was lucky enough to be trained by good officers. Um, we're taught we were taught, like, you know what a J turn is?
No.
Okay, so for example, if you're in a situation and then you have to reverse out of a situation, right? You have to reverse down a block, but
Right.
but you obviously can't continue traveling in reverse. So you reverse until you get to a point where you can turn the wheel fast enough, and we were trained to reverse out of situations to turn the wheel to turn our vehicle into a 180 and then continue going forward. It's like stunt driver stuff. Some of the things we
Okay.
learned how to do.
Okay.
Um, part of evoc training was also learning to avoid the pedestrians of New York City. There were cones as opposed to people, but there were different mechanisms used to teach us, like, people jump out. You have to be prepared, like how to get around obstacles, how to make sure you fit in between obstacles, things like that. So yes, there is absolute training for that. And for pursuit, you're not supposed to pursue. That's their official training. You're not highway, you're not supposed to pursue.
I would assume that every person who drives a patrol car has to have taken that evoc training.
Yes. Yes. And people do fail it. So there
Okay.
are some police officers who are mandatory recorders. And what that means is you sit in the passenger seat. So the way an RMP is manned is there is the operator, the driver, and the recorder. The operator is to handle the vehicle. That is the most important. They're responsible for the condition and the handling. The recorder is supposed to handle all the radio calls and the reports and blah whatever. Now, most most operators and recorders, most RMPs are filled with partners. So they'll rotate responsibility. Or, for example, I loved to drive. I still love to drive. My partner hated driving. So we're both trained and certified, but she hated driving. So for
Right.
about 5.5 years, my partner did 90% of the reports because she hated driving that much. But at the same time, I also would help her with reports. If there was a multi-paged report, I would do some. I would help out. But oftentimes I was just running. She's writing the reports while I'm driving to the next call. There were nights where it's called holding. We would hold anywhere between 3 and 5 calls. So New York City is handled very differently than other places. So everything comes over the radio, or now I think it comes through their phones too. Phones were only introduced shortly before I left the department, but because I was on the TS for so long, restricted, I didn't deal with the phones much. So I know like some of the reports were done through your phone and stuff like that, but I didn't deal with that often. So you the people call 911. 911 routes it to whatever dispatch area, whatever zone for your precinct. It calls out the job. It will try to assign it to the sector that corresponds to the address of the job. Sometimes that sector car is unavailable, or they're already holding 5 jobs, which is what you were allowed to hold max. This is actually another challenge with the department: laziness, because there were certain cops who would hold those 5 jobs so that they couldn't be assigned another job. So they also wouldn't respond. If you called for help over the radio, they wouldn't respond. Again, certain people don't belong under the label cop. Just because you have a badge and a gun doesn't mean you're a cop. So you can understand.
I'm expecting you to have my back.
Exactly. When I call for help, it means I need help. It doesn't mean I'm like, oh, could you bring me a coffee? No, dude. I might be under fire. You don't know.
Right.
So needless to say, you have these certain people who would make it difficult. They wouldn't pick up additional radio runs. But my partner and I, we would pick up jobs in everyone else's thing and everyone else's sector also, because there were certain cops we worked with that would do the same for us. And sometimes you have a job that's a low priority job. Like it's someone broke into a vehicle. They don't know if anything was stolen, but the vehicle was parked 2 days ago, so they don't really know when it happened. That's a crime in the past, and it's a low priority because it's property. It's not a person that's in danger. So that's going to be low priority. But now you have a burglar alarm going off that's nearby. Even if we're driving through, it's not our sector. We're going to say, for example, my call was I worked in the 104, and I often worked in sector Adam Charlie, 2 sectors combined. So my call would be for Adam. So my partner or I would get on the radio and say, for Adam, put that on us. For Adam, we'll take that. For Adam, we'll just stack on us. Because at the same time, if jobs are in the queue for too long and not assigned, then the precinct looks bad. And then you get in trouble because you were working and you should have done something. So we always made the attempt to do the best we could. So we're holding 3 jobs, but there's more jobs coming in. So I'm running across, driving. She's doing reports because you can't finalize a job and clear it off your queue until you have the report done too. And some of the reports are so antiquated and unnecessary. Like we could answer 7 questions to explain a situation, but yet I have a 4-page report front and back with 162 questions on it. For what? These are
Wow.
that also attributes to the difficulties. So there's another one for you.
Okay.
But yeah, there's there's there is the requirement that you cannot drive unless you're trained for it.
So
I understand.
did you learn anything in your career that an obstacle that either you had to change or you had to avoid or you had to say, wow, I screwed up. I'm sorry. I won't do that again.
Yes, a multitude of them. Um, Oftentimes it was just the fact of, like you said, documenting everything, because I had a memory like a glue trap, but it wasn't always in my memo book. So I learned that when I went to court, for example, I was trained on speed. So I would write people for speeding.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that my partner used to be amazed and hate me at the same time, because she had to write everything down on the back of the summons and in her memo book in case she couldn't find the summons. So this one specific event, I actually, this has 2 little factors. I learned that acronyms are important, and I'll explain that in a follow-up. So I pulled this person over for speeding. This person was probably the most irate individual I have ever dealt with. Okay. And take that into account, right? Now, my memory's a trap at the time. It is not anymore. Um, it was a trap. So I remembered the weather. I remembered the lanes. I remembered potholes. I remembered the color of your vehicle. There were times I remembered the tires on your vehicle because I'm so observant. I remembered your license plate. I remembered anything and everything. I knew what you were wearing. I knew how you were sitting. I knew everything. Okay. And I would go to traffic court and I would win. I'd say I'd win 90% of my cases. And I say that because there were times you go to traffic court and you write multiple summonses, and the judge is like, okay, you got him on 3. I'm going to give him 2. Like if I wrote somebody for 5 summonses, and by the way, when I wrote someone for 5 summonses, they deserved more. Like they violated so many different things, but needless to say. So going to court, right? This one person, I wrote things on the back of the summons, but I did not put all of them in my memo book. So I used to hate how my partner would double write everything. So you're supposed to bring the summons and the memo book to court.
Mm-hmm.
And this is just one example, but this is just prime in terms of recording stuff. So I go to court. They hire a lawyer. I go to court 4 times for the same person. They just keep rescheduling. I don't care. I get overtime for going to court. Go ahead. Make me go to court more. Finally, I get before the lawyer. Lawyer and the judge and I are sitting at the counter. The cited person, we'll say, is standing to the other side of the lawyer, right? And they're playing like this whole like super sweet religious holier than thou person standing in front of the judge. So I do my testimony. Lawyer does the standard thing. Well, how do you remember this? Do you remember the weather? Yes, I do. It was in my testimony. Oh, well, how do you remember? Because I remember, because I wrote it down. Oh, well, is it in your memo book? I said, no, it's not in my memo book for this summons. Okay, well, where is it? I said, first of all, it's in my memory. But second of all, the important factors that I wrote down are on the summons. Okay, I need to see the summons. I looked at them and I was like, what? First time a lawyer had asked me for my summons. The judge says they have the right to see the summons. It's evidence. I said, okay. Looking at my summons, and they're like, how do I know you didn't write this morning? I said, how do I know the weather from 4 months ago to this morning? And the judge says, that's a good point. And the lawyer is like, well, how do I know you didn't Google it? And the judge goes, okay, really, counsel? So then counsel's like, okay, well, you said this. It's not on here. I said, because I remembered it, but you didn't write it down. So how can you prove it? And I said, my memory proves it for me. Well, that's not admissible in court. I can't take your memory out. I said, okay, you want to fault me on not writing that down? That's fine. But the fact of the issue, the reasoning for the issuance of the summons doesn't change. And just because you don't see it on the summons doesn't change. Wait a minute, officer. You have AH on the top of your summons on the back. What does that mean? And I looked at them and I said, actually, that's on the front and the back. And this guy now is starting to get annoyed because I'm arguing with the lawyer. So now his colors are starting to come out. He's starting to get a little animated, like huffing and like slapping the counter, right? So I said, well, that was a specific note that I wrote in reference to your client. Well, what does that mean? And I said, well, it's initials for something. And the lawyer goes, are you claiming that my client is an asshole? And I said, no. So I said, no, I'm not saying that. Are you? And they were like, well, how dare you try and spin that on me? I said, listen, I just have something written on my summons for my own purposes. And you specifically want to refute anything else that's written. So why does it matter what it means? Well, I need to know what it means because you put it on here and now it's evidence. And judge, I want this ticket thrown out because this officer is speaking ill of my client and blah, blah, blah. And now the client heard the lawyer say that I was saying that the client's an asshole. Now the client is getting pissed, like, how dare you? You're such a dick. You're a piece of shit. You're not a cop. You're just the summons bunny or something like that, like some stupid stuff, right? And the judge is like this. He's like sitting back, like, what the hell's going on? And then the lawyer pushed me again. He was like, really? This is how you treat people? You pull someone over and you penalize them and then you call them names and write it on your summons. I said, I want to remind you, you used the word you used. I did not. That is an acronym. Well, what does it mean? And I said, look at your client right now and his behavior. Yeah, my client's fine. And the judge looks at me and goes, what do you mean, officer? And I said, AH, angry and hostile. And the judge goes, yep, guilty. But again, I learned that you have to cover your ass, but I also learned I know I meant asshole.
Yes.
I know I meant it, but I knew that I had to be able to justify it in court in case it ever came into question. Because normally when you sit in court, in traffic court, you have your memo book and your summons right in front of you face up. The attorney, so if I'm here, right, the attorney's right here. So they can see everything I have on the deck. So I protected myself. But yeah, things like that. That was one of the big things I learned is documentation. And especially when it comes to property. Like they teach you to document everything, but there are things I documented because I had been accused of stealing someone's gold tooth from their mouth.
Out of their mouth?
Out of their mouth.
Like you reached and pulled it out.
Yep. That was the accusation.
I got a tooth I'd like you to fix.
Yeah. Like what the hell? But I mean, I dealt with a lot. And that's what it is because the city pays out these accusations. Whether they're provable or not, the city will often pay out. They pay what they call a nuisance fee, and it's a couple $100 up to $2,500. So I've been sued for telling someone I don't speak Spanish. I was labeled a racist for 7 years by the Civilian Complaint Review Board because I told a woman I don't speak Spanish. And finally, they removed it from my record because the woman refused to ever show up to testify that that's what I said. They took her allegation and assigned it to me and found me guilty without even a trial.
So, what is your outlook on the profession? I guess that means, would you tell one of your children to become cops?
Yes, just not NYPD.
Okay.
However, I must say the current political environment makes me hold back a little. But one of my son actually has said, like, he wants to be a surgeon, but he wouldn't mind being a detective. And I said, that's great, but I'd rather you be a surgeon. I'd rather you be a doctor. I'd rather you help people in a way that's much more beneficial for them than you trying to fight an uphill battle and really be, you're going to face more adversity than you are support. And that again has to do with the political environment. But do we need detectives? Do we need police officers? Yes, 1000%. But we need them for the right reasons. And we need them to do the right job.
So the defund the police efforts, I may be ill-informed about this. Does that, nobody thinks that we shouldn't have police, do they? Do they think that they want less police officers and more mental health workers?
Some just believe less police officers in general.
Really?
There is a shared sentiment of that. Now, for New York City, I believe you need more police because there are not enough cops, or there are not enough officers, and cops are leaving the department to go where they're going to be more appreciated.
Okay.
Whether it be financially or not. Police officers don't always run because they may not make it in another department. They may not make it in another location. They may not even get a second look if they tried. But the ones who know what they're doing and do things for the right reasons, a lot of them are running. They're jumping ship from New York City. There are record numbers of loss of retention in the
So there
department.
must, so the age is getting younger and the experience younger.
Well, to my knowledge, I don't think it's under 21, but yes, a lot of the cops are younger. But the older cops have just had enough.
Right. So as soon as you hit that 20 or 25 years, you're out, and now you have 5 and 8 and 10 year experienced cops being more of a majority of the force.
Yes. A lot of people are leaving when it's time to go. Yeah, they're hitting. So my tier, right? My tier was 20 years. Tier 3 was 25, 22 and a half years, or 25 for full pension, meaning full 50%. Otherwise, you got 45%. Now, I'm not sure if it's still 25 years, but then I know that there was another proposal that it was going to be 25 years and you have to be 55 years old to retire. Now, that works if you get on at your late 20s or 30 years old. And by right, you should be on older. But at the same time, personal experience speaks to this very well. The job beats you down and the city stands on your neck. So, for example, for the city standing on my neck, for me, I had my first knee surgery. They made me wait 7 months to get the surgery. If I had had the surgery within the first couple of weeks, my recovery time would have been much faster. My abilities would have been better. My return to ability would have been better. But the city doesn't want to pay for you to do it. And they can't have your medical insurance do it because it's line of duty injury. That's why some people don't report it and then just say they got hurt at home. Now, there is also, which I didn't know at the time, but I learned thereafter, there's a benefit to being line of duty injury. Your money is tax free for the time that you are out on your injury. So they tax your money, but then when you file your taxes, you get a better return because they have to remove any of that withholding. Is that cool? Yeah, that's nice to get a nice check. But that doesn't warrant whether you, in my opinion, that doesn't warrant whether you decide to report your injury or not. I don't care if you tax my money, dude. I just want to get better so I can get back out there. So my last 3 surgeries, it took them 9 months to approve all 3 surgeries. They made me go through 1 surgery and recover for 3 months. Then they made me go through another surgery and recover for 3 months. Then I had to go back to the precinct and wait for them to approve the surgery because the first one didn't do what it was supposed to do because they were putting a Band-Aid on a bullet hole. You know what I mean? Like not literally a bullet hole, but they wasted money to follow a protocol that doesn't benefit anyone. Didn't benefit me, didn't benefit the city. So they're penny wise and dollar foolish. But the department also doesn't want you to go out on injury because then it hurts their numbers. The city doesn't want the department to put you out on injury.
Right.
So
you get caught in bureaucratic red tape and signals taught to you, or do you make them up on the fly, or?
Yes and no. So there is some training. So that HIDA training that I was mentioning, right? Part of that training is location takedowns. Because it's drug trafficking, you have to know. You have to be able to converse without actual words and sounds when you're going through a dark building and whatnot, or what have you, right? So some of the training will teach you basics. Some of them are just team cooperatives. So the team themselves will decide what signals to use. Some of them are military, like military call signs that are brought to the department because the department is paramilitary. So you'll have like a Marine who's used to doing takedowns will come into your precinct or into your division or into your unit. And now you're going in, they're going to start to teach call signs. They're going to teach the hold sign. You know, they're going to teach straight. They're going to teach left, right, whatever. And some of that is just basic, you know, like left or right. Some of it is a furtherance of driving signals. You know, I'm trying to get you to see it. So you have your halt, right? Or you have your turning, or you're going to turn the other way, or you're putting your fist out. And we're not talking about, you know, racist type calls. We're talking about it, just general hand signals. I want to be clear. But yes, some of them are sort of like understood. But if you have like SWAT, or in New York City, we don't have SWAT. We have ESU, Emergency Services Unit. We also have HIDA teams. We also have JTTF, which is Joint Terrorism Task Force, which is NYPD and FBI. We have counterterrorism. Now, I went to counterterrorism training, and they did work with us on hand signals, but basic ones. You know, the closed fist to stop, or 2 fingers, meaning 2 bodies go. Full hand means whatever's on my side goes. You know, like anyone to my side, you see the sign, you go, and vice versa, you know, like, but not everyone knows full hand means whoever's here goes, as opposed to 2 fingers means 2 people. Some people just might think I'm just doing the sign because that's what it is. But a lot of what you see on TV, naturally it's scripted, obviously, but a lot of that is either from personal experience of their coordinator. Like there's actually a movie TV film unit in the NYPD who works with the shows of that relate to NYPD. You know, LAPD has a smarter background the way they do it, where everything that is used has to be purchased from the LAPD or rented. Whereas in New York, they use the film unit, they pay for the film unit to be on scene and secure and whatnot. But all the cars, for example, Blue Bloods, there's no 12th precinct, but they will use separate vehicles and put decals on it. Now, if they had any brains in terms of finances, they would follow the LAPD pattern where the filming unit is going to buy or purchase these vehicles or provide these vehicles, and they're going to adorn the insignia of the department. When you're done filming, those now need to go to the department so that they follow protocol. You know what I mean? There are ways to do it, but yes, so their coordinators sometimes will be actual officers from that department. But there are some shows that are like produced that relate to NYPD, but the officer was like a random detective in Lubbock County. Like they never worked in New York City. They don't even know what a street name is or how they're divided, like where it's card, where it's court, avenue, road, drive, like in terms of mapping. They don't know.
Right.
So some of it is very realistic and some of it is accurate, while a lot of it is fictionally based.
You have a white whale. That guy who you knew that he was a murderer or a drug salesman and you couldn't catch him, or the guy who put his hands on his wife, but the wife would just never file a complaint. You knew he was going to kill her one day. Do you have anything like that?
Yes, multiple. I had one that was a team. I locked them up for grand larceny 4 times. They headed like their own little task force who went around stealing rims off of vehicles. And I locked them up and they would always get out. I lock them up, they get out. After the 3rd time I locked them up, and I would always make my notifications to auto crime, which is why I went for auto crime training. And they then used them as the whale because they would let them take whatever to get caught, and then they would return whatever. But it was almost as if they became informants, kind of. So they would tell us where the operations were happening. So they would get away scot-free, but the rest of their team would get tagged. It was weird. But I actually had this. My old precinct was very mixed. There was a lot of Polish, there was a lot of Albanian, there was a lot of Armenian, there was a lot of Indian, Guyanese.
Can you say where your precinct was?
Ridgewood, Glendale, Middle Village, Maspeth, all in Queens.
Okay.
A lot of Spanish, multiple nationalities. Some black, but and some Asian, but the majority was white and Spanish, like European white. And part of the precinct bordered Bushwick, Brooklyn, and another part bordered East New York, and another part bordered Forest Hills and Rego Park. And another part bordered Elmhurst, which was very Spanish. So like it was literally diverse, you know? So there were, for some reason, there was this couple. It was a Polish man and a Spanish woman. And they beat the shit out of each other regularly. But he always left her in a puddle of blood. Like, he always just went too far. Now, I'm not saying they should have fought to begin with, but I just mean in general. He always was the one to finish it, we'll say. And she would never press charges. Never. He just had a bad day. Or he would say, she just had a bad day. You guys are going to kill each other. One of you is going to die. She died. She was killed. He stabbed her. He got too drunk and fought too hard and stabbed her. And even though we got him, most of the charges didn't stick. Like the sub charges, we couldn't prove that he actually stabbed her because the knife had both of their prints and they had both cut each other. So
Wow.
It was like the weirdest thing. We could not, the detectives went to bat. We could not prove it. And he's out of jail now. He was in jail for assault, but never for murder. Homicide was never kept on him. So
Wow.
yeah, I've had cases like that. I've had drug dealers too that I've locked up multiple times, and I knew it was going to get worse. One of my drug dealers was found hanging. We couldn't get him, but some people that he pissed off got him. So I've had it both ways, where I've seen the result or where I've known the result is going to happen.
That must really rip at your heart.
It does, because you can't stop it, and you can't fix stupid. So, like for example, the domestic one, I can't force you to press charges unless I see it myself. I can't force it. And by the time we got there, they were just sitting on the floor every time. Believe it or not, the final injury for me before my knee replacement was a domestic that was a constant. Father and son would fight all the time. And the son was now 18. So he had been fighting with his father since he was 15. And they lived on the border of the precinct, but it was always our job. You know, like it was always called to us because literally the street separated it. And they would always fight on the sidewalk in front of their house, never across the street. So this one call comes in and they're fighting, and the son beat the ever living shit out of the father. The son was high and drunk, and now he's an 18-year-old dude like a behemoth. And he decided that he was going to beat the ever loving Christ out of his father. And he did. And we got called from the neighbors, not the father. And then we get there and we go, I'm going to lock up the kid. I go to put cuffs on him. The kid turns around, swings me, cold clocks me on the side of the head. Now I'm fighting with him. The father decides he's going to try to spear me. He gets up off the ground and he tries to attack me, and he comes at a flying spear with me, tries to take my side. I kind of shoo him off while I'm fighting with the son. And when I say fighting, I mean like throwing punches and grappling, like all at the same time. Like we're fighting. 3 other cops. My partner didn't come upstairs yet. This was one of the ones where my partner was driving. So I jumped out and ran in, and she didn't park yet. So she's coming up the stairs and another unit comes because they heard my radio being hit, because when the guy speared me, he kept hitting the button with his arm, whether he meant to or not. And luckily he did, because it could have been a lot worse. But 3 other cops besides my partner show up, and I'm fighting this guy. I'm kicking the father off of me, and we wind up. Now, I always knew this kid was going to like either kill his father or kill himself, you know, like he was just going to OD or something. So fighting with him, we get to the ground. the father breaks free of one of the other cops and tries to attack me again. And now it's me and the kid on the bottom of a pile with 4 other cops and the father on top. I went down on my knees, which had already been damaged multiple times, and the kid was swinging at one of my knees. He was pounding at my knee. And sure enough, that's the knee I needed the replacement in that the job wouldn't give me. Well, that was the end of my career that night.
Sorry.
So, but that was another one. Like, I knew it was coming. I just didn't know it was going to be me that was going to wind up hurt. You know? And the father never pressed charges. The city let them sue me. The city took a lawsuit from them and paid them $50,000.
Wow.
But yet I wasn't allowed to sue. I couldn't sue for the damage he caused me. I couldn't sue the city because if I sued the city, then the city wouldn't represent me in the lawsuit from them.
That's really discouraging.
And I don't really like the fact that we're a litigious society and always looking to gain money. But the fact is, you literally took my livelihood away from me. And at the time, I had no idea if I would ever get a disability pension. I just knew I couldn't work.
You have any messages for the undergraduates interested in becoming a police officer?
The most important message I would ever have: take extreme concentration and place priority on training. Don't listen to random people. Train. Train like your life depends on it, because it will. And when I say that, I also refer to firearm training. So, and I can use this as an example. I trained with my firearm regularly. However, the department only requires you to go twice a year. There are criminals out in the street who are training in the parks with their firearms every week, if not every day. They're gunning for you. And I don't mean you, anyone specific, but they're looking to save their own lives. And if it means taking yours, that's the plan. But you need to be able to know that your training is going to save your life and get you further in general, because it's going to save others. With training equals muscle memory. Muscle memory is what will ultimately save your life. That's the best advice I could give anyone. Be sure of what you want to do. Go into it for the right reasons, meaning like you actually want to help people and not just pad yourself. But train. And even on your own. And stay physically fit. Don't become an Oompa Loompa, because getting in and out of an RMP or a police vehicle, it's not going to save your life if you have to roll out of it. Unless you're taking fire, which is a rarity, but it does happen. But you understand what I mean? Like, your health is important. And
sure.
So with the training, I also mean train for your own health. Keep yourself in a good standing. But do it for the right reason is probably the number one thing I can recommend for anyone. Whatever profession you go into, do it for the right reason. You're going to make money in your life. You're going to find your own way. You want to be rich and that's what you want to do? Great. Have at it. But just make sure you love what you do and you do it for the right reasons.
Well, all right. It's been a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very much.
It has been a pleasure, Stan. Thank you.